behind all these systems, you're going to start having data. And that's where the data really comes in, because, to run any of these systems, there's information behind it. And I guess, maybe that's where I just kind of want to leave this question at this time, is that for any system to work, there has to be information that's going in and then information that's coming out. And what really business data is the information that's in your documentation that tells your team how to create that product or that system or that recipe that your business provides that allows you to replicate that solution or that product time and time again. So that's the data that goes into the system. That is your business proprietary system. That is your business proprietary data. And all of that should be thought of as your business data, as your business system. And that's really what you need to start thinking in terms of business data.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Today's business climate relies heavily on data. Data is one of the essential currencies that drive the business world because it's used to help business leaders make decisions based on facts, trends, and statistical numbers. As a business owner, you will inevitably be dealing with data, even more because we're in a digital world and so much of business is conducted through the online space. However, this means that there is much more ease of data collection than ever before, whether this is regarding internal affairs, customers, supply chain, etc. But oftentimes there's so much information out there that leaders aren't able to sift through the noise and get the right information to make the best decision about strategy and growth. And there are other times business leaders might not have the proper systems to track data accurately, leading to false reports and bad data. So this is exactly why we thought it was important to discuss the importance of understanding data and how to use it to grow your business. We have the pleasure of being joined by Ebitari Larsen, award-winning researcher, teacher, and founder of Delta Data Services, where this organization specializes in gathering and analyzing data for business intelligence and reporting for sales and marketing departments. So during our conversation today, you're going to learn how to use data to influence your business decisions, what data you should be tracking, and ways to use data to delegate in your business and find customers who are loyal and ready to buy. So let's dive in. Today's episode is sponsored by For Purpose, a 2-floor sports restaurant and event space located in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where they offer delicious American and Caribbean cuisine. This unique Black-owned space offers on-site and off-site catering, only requiring a 7-day advance notice to the event. Their second-floor catering and event space come together as a package and includes in-house catering with food packages starting at just $85 per person. This package includes a buffet-style event menu that accommodates groups of 25 or more and consists of an appetizer, entree, dessert, and drink packages. This is the perfect option for birthday celebrations, graduation parties, dinners, baby showers, and Department of Education events. Event times are a max of 3 hours with an additional charge for each hour after. For Purposes, off-site catering options are perfect for corporate events, graduations, house parties, and more. Prior to booking, prices are subject to change, so email info@ivpurposebk.com to book your next special occasion. You can also learn more about For Purpose at ivpurposebk.com. So, Ebitari, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. I am so grateful that you are here today, so welcome to the show.
Thank you, Monique. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. So I always like to start off with asking my guests if you could just tell my audience a little bit about who you are, What is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Okay. As mentioned, my name is Ebitari Larsen. I'm president of Delta Data Services, LLC. We're based in Long Beach, California. I founded Delta Data Services in 2009. This was around the time of the financial crisis that started in 2008. And I had just moved here with my husband from Washington, D.C. area. So I'm kind of going backwards, I guess. So I was working as a management consultant in Washington, D.C. at that time. And a lot of consultants in Washington, D.C. are federal government contractors. And that was what I was doing at that time. So some of my clients were the Department of Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration, Environmental Protection Agency, and the Food and Drug Administration. So when we eventually moved to California, I actually modeled Delta Data Services after that management consulting firm and wanted to start state and local government contracting. And so that was the model for Delta Data Services, supporting them like that management consulting firm in IT and technology. And then before Washington, D.C., I used to live in Hawaii. And so I'm moving backward. I'm kind of going backward in the timeline. But what brought me to Hawaii was, at first I was a high school science teacher in one of the largest private schools in the U.S. It's called Punahou School. And it has a lot of famous alumni, including President Barack Obama. That is where he attended high school. So yeah, not while I was there, but he had graduated by the time I worked there. And I taught, as mentioned, high school science. Taught there for 3 years. My first year I was a mentee, and then my next 2 years I was a full-time teacher. And my mentor, her husband was a marine geologist at the University of Hawaii. So just through that network, I wanted to go back and get a master's of science. And so, to get a master's or advanced degree in science, you really need a research professor to take you under their research subject or project. So he became my research advisor. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, I worked on my master's degree in marine geology and geophysics, and I studied coral reefs in a bay on the windward side of Oahu called Kailua Bay. I was a certified marine scuba diver, and I was collected remote sensing data. So started working with big data, gathered data from an airplane, actually went up in the plane, mapped the route of the airplane, went up with them, collected the data. Then we brought that data down, put it into Photoshop actually, and mapped all the pictures together. And then because the pictures were actually data, like measurements of light energy, we were able to do physical models on them and calculate depth and bottom type. And then we were able to dive and ground truth that data. So that was what I was doing in Hawaii. And then let me backtrack from there. Before there, I was in Maine, which is why you can see I ended up in Hawaii, because Maine is very cold. But in Maine, that's where I did my undergraduate degree at Bowdoin College. And I ended up in Maine because even though my father is Nigerian and my mother is American, they met at Michigan State University, East Lansing, and then moved back to Nigeria. My dad was here on scholarship. My grandmother was from Maine. So I went to Bowdoin College in Maine. And then since it was so cold there, Hawaii was so appealing. But before Maine, I was born and raised in Nigeria, moved to the U.S. for college. But since my mom's American, we would come here for summers, Maine or Michigan, and visit family, things like that. But I also had the good fortune. My father took a temporary position in Kenya for my last 2 years of high school. So I was able to go to school at a British school in Nairobi for my last 2 years of high school. So I got to experience living in another African country as well before I came to America. So I've really had the opportunity to live in many different parts of the world throughout my lifetime. So it's been an incredible journey, which ended me in California with Delta Data Services and becoming an entrepreneur. And we'll talk more about data systems and what we do at Delta Data Services.
Yes, I love it. I love it how you took us all on the journey, and such a wonderful story. And which brings us to, today is all about understanding data and using it to grow your business. Because even when you were telling your story, I was like, oh my God, that sounds so amazing. She's so smart. So I'm excited to dive into today's conversation with you. So first, let's start by talking about the role of data when it comes to business, because we hear about, like you mentioned, big data, all of these things, but really just breaking it down to what data is and why is it so important for businesses?
Okay. In thinking about this question, I wanted to start with that data is what comes out of the systems of a business. So I thought we'd take a step back and look at some businesses. Like when I was young, I always used to get perplexed by why, certain banks had different login procedure, or their portals looked different, or why certain cars had a different way you opened the car door or turned on the car. So why can't they all be the same? Or, there's the way you change the tire or whatever, why can't there be more standardization? Why is everything so specific to a business? And now I realize as an entrepreneur that it's because those systems are what are unique to a business. And they're the proprietary knowledge of that business. They're what make the business special, and they're what push certain businesses ahead of other businesses, and then maybe eventually make other businesses be able to take over, go ahead of other businesses. So really, any business that is successful are the ones who have identified that we have systems, we have processes, and a lot of times the really successful ones have documented that and have distributed this documentation to all team members who have to know about them. And so all team members are kind of doing the same thing and are able to replicate and produce the same outcome the same way over and over. It doesn't matter what the business does, if it's a services business or a product business. You always in business want to be able to replicate that same solution. So I remember when I was in DC, actually, we used to like to go to this Peruvian restaurant, and it was a mom and pop Peruvian restaurant, but their Peruvian chicken was always the same. And they would also serve plantains and rice. And there was always like a long line out the door and always lots of business. But we always went because we could always count on that chicken was going to be exactly the same that we expected and we wanted it to be. And that was their system. They had it down, no matter whether they hired new employees or there was turnover or anything like that, because somehow, I don't know how they documented their systems at this restaurant, but somehow they got it down that no matter who came and went on the team, they were always able to replicate that exact same Peruvian, recipe and ingredients and outcome of the Peruvian chicken that we always went there to eat. And so these are the systems I'm talking about. Businesses, no matter what you do, if you can replicate what your clients love about you so much and ensure that you're able to provide that to them throughout time so that they can always count on you to be there to give them that service, as well as to keep up with time as time changes, and you can add more value to what they offer them, but the value improves on the offering that you are giving them, then that helps you to grow your business and things like that. So those are your systems. Now, behind all these systems, you're going to start having data. And that's where the data really comes in, because to run any of these systems, there's information behind it. And I guess, maybe that's where I just kind of want to leave this question at this time, is that for any system to work, there has to be information that's going in and then information that's coming out. And what really business data is the information that's in your documentation that tells your team how to create that product or that system or that recipe that your business provides that allows you to replicate that solution or that product time and time again. So that's the data that goes into the system. That is your business proprietary system. That is your business proprietary data. And all of that should be thought of as your business data, as your business system. And that's really what you need to start thinking in terms of business data.
I love that. And I love that you said that information is behind those systems. Well, my next question would be that what are some of the ways that it can influence a business's success? So you mentioned that information is behind those systems. So that, assuming, is what makes a business successful.
Yes. So a business's success, I think I started to answer that question a little bit in the first part of the question. I think a business's success is really tied into the replicability of the service or the product, the ability to always provide that same service that your client is expecting. And so that's really embedded, I think, in documentation and processes. So systems like documentation means you write down exactly what your team members should be doing, and somehow you get them trained on it, or you find a way to get that knowledge transferred to them and get them to practice doing those things. Or you have computer systems like portals where people have to maybe enter their timesheet, or they have to track where they're producing manufacturing things, and they have to put numbers in where they're measuring things, ways to keep people quality or keep people constrained by the requirements to ensure replicability. So you can have it written down, or you can have it in a system like a computer system that will ensure people enter the right number, and then it calculates it and spits it out and says, yep, you've put in the right amount of sugar, so it will produce the kind of cake we're expecting, or you've put in the right amount of this ingredient, so it will create the kind of soap we're expecting. So you can use computer systems, or you can use writing it down and training people on it. But the idea in business is people like it when they get what they're expecting, what they're used to, what they came here to get. And if they're used to getting a great customer experience, great customer support, and then that just isn't present, or they're used to getting a product and it's always of a certain quality, and then the quality starts going down, you start to lose customers. So that's where the data comes in, is that if you can keep your product consistent by keeping the system consistent, and behind the system is the data the documentation, the writing, the tracking of the numbers to make sure the output is always the exact same, because the data that went in made sure that the output was always going to be exactly the same. Then your customers are happy, because people want to always have that same good experience. Now, like some of the past podcasters have mentioned, not everyone is going to be your client. Not everyone is going to like what you have to offer, but those people who do are dedicated to you, and they want to come to your business and get what they're expecting. So you want to continue to cater to the people who have found you as their quote unquote tribe. They want to have that same replicable experience. And even if you sell soap or pastries, it's more than just that, isn't it? An experience is always so much more. It's about walking into the store and what it feels like and how you're greeted, and then a bite of the pastry, and then walking out and what it feels like in front of the store and who you see out there. So that whole thing, there's data behind it somehow, and that's what people want to experience over and over and over. And you got to find a way to keep it, and that's where the data comes in.
Yeah, I love that, because it makes me think of when you go into a business and you really feel like that business knows you. And from even what you're saying, it's like they know you because of the data that is supporting that. And it's going to keep me coming back as a repeat customer and telling other people about it. So I love how you broke that down. And also it makes me think about understanding data is that when you're doing something in business, it makes it feel as if everything is done intentional and you're not wasting time focusing on the wrong things.
Yes, it is. Everything is done intentional. And when you do something that you think, wow, this thing I did is really good, it's best to create a system around it. You know, like write it down or find a way to keep track of it so others can start doing it. You want to embed that proprietary knowledge, data, and system into your business somehow. However it works for your organization, but just, trap that system, that knowledge, that, whatever you just did, don't let it just slip through your fingers. Just catch it and keep it somehow. Keep that data, keep that system so that you can build on it.
Yes, I love it. I'm so excited about today's conversation because it's something that you hear a lot about, data this, data that. And I think it's so important for our audience to be ahead of the curve and just understanding what we're talking about in this business world. So I'm loving we're breaking this down on this podcast episode. So moving on, Ebitari, I want to talk about, now one of my questions is about understanding business intelligence, also known as BI, but also what data actually matters. So do you think we should talk about BI first, or what kind of data matters?
Let's do both, but maybe I should talk about what BI is first, business intelligence, and then what data and why data matters.
Okay, so we'll do that. And then, so what is business intelligence and why does it matter? First, start there.
Yes, business intelligence is a way of just saying, how can I grasp more information from all the data behind my systems and sort of not just look at them in separate repositories or separate batches, but how can I bring all my systems together and look at them as a more comprehensive group? So a lot of times the CEO of a company is already doing this because that's how CEOs work. A CEO is generally always thinking about all parts of the business and thinking about the finances and the selling and the operations and the human resources and everything. And they're just churning it through their brain and making all the connections. But as you grow, you can't do that anymore. So you have to start delegating some of those tasks. And the best way to do that is to start using business intelligence so that the people you hire can see some of that stuff that naturally comes to a CEO in their head, so that your finance tool and your timesheets and your salespeople and your help desk support and your, human resources and all that data can be kind of collected in one place, and you can crunch the data in different ways through simple single numbers that maybe show an increase or a decrease from a certain period, like last month or last year. Those are called key performance indicators, KPIs. So you can have just a little number like that. And a lot of times on business intelligence systems, they will put these reports on what's called a dashboard. So it's just like a big panel, and then you might have some KPIs, key performance indicators at the top. So it'll be a very summarizing number, maybe showing an arrow that this number went up from the last period or went down from the last period. Then you'll scroll down the dashboard. You might start seeing some reports, pie charts, bar charts, things like that. And they'll start presenting maybe timesheet data per customer. So now it's pulling some timesheets with some human resources data, or it might be sales data with some financial data. So it's starting to pull from the different repositories or the different systems, pull them together. And then you might scroll down the dashboard, and then you'll see actually like your traditional report that just looks like a spreadsheet, and then a lot of times these business intelligence dashboards are very interactive. So you might have what you call user filters at the top, so that maybe you have different department heads, and they're able to come and just turn on a filter for their department, and then all the KPIs, all the graphs, and all the reports will just automatically update and only show the results for their department, for example. Or maybe they're looking for the result for just a given time period. They can just change the start and end date of what's called the user filters, and then they just change those, and then all those dashboards, the KPIs, the graphs, the reports, they'll just automatically update to the numbers just for that time period. So that's what a business intelligence dashboard might look like. It's just really, in my sense, it's really trying to do what a CEO can normally do in a small business just in their own head. But as you grow, you have to delegate all that. And you gotta love the CEOs because they just do amazing work, keeping track of all this. And some of them are still doing that even with a big business. But this just is a way to bring a lot of repositories together and get many people seeing the same thing that maybe that CEO already is keeping somehow in their big brain. So that's how I would describe it.
And so you mentioned KPIs, because I know we track our KPIs at Black to Business, mostly in Excel. Now, would you say the dashboard is something that could be hosted in Excel, or is it particular programs?
That's a great question. So actually, Excel does have what are called pivot tables. I don't know if that's what you guys build your KPIs in. So, okay, there are sort of advanced Excel features, but my sense from when I used to work more in Excel is it takes a bit more advanced user to develop that. Yeah. Whereas when you have a business intelligence tool, the kind of path of the new coding systems or just any kind of IT system, software, cloud technology these days is all drag and drop. So you don't have to be a coder anymore. It's all very much like I said, just drag and drop. So a lot of these KPIs, you just be able to drag the KPI onto the dashboard and then edit it and put in your fields and what kind of, so it's a little bit more user friendly to do it in some of these business intelligence tools. Now, as you want to get more advanced KPIs, then you can apply code and things like that. You might start needing a developer just like you would in Excel. But that's sort of the beauty of the out-of-the-box cloud business intelligence tool, is that at least to get some basic KPIs, graphs, and reports, you're still going to be in that drag and drop mode. Like, you know how these days you can make a website very easily with the drag and drop technology? It would be similar for a entry kind of level business intelligence tool. You would just drag and drop the type of KPI or graph you want to make. Your data is behind, and then you pick your fields and you just crunch them the way you want and put them on your dashboard, and then you're kind of ready to go. So that's how it's a little bit, that's the newer technology, would be more of a drag and drop than Excel.
Got it. Makes so much sense. Okay. So speaking of business intelligence, now that we've talked about, using this information, ways to organize the information, I want to talk about how can business intelligence really help companies? Because like you said, it takes the information out of the CEO's head and distribute it amongst the team. How this can help companies make smarter decisions, especially when they have people in different departments, but also data-driven decisions.
Yes. So I was trying to think about some of the business intelligence reports and dashboards that we've created for ourselves at Delta Data Services, as well as for our clients and things like that. And I think the majority actually of business intelligence reports and dashboards and things that we are creating, for better or for worse, really are to keep track of team members, and kind of what they're doing, and therefore how they're supporting clients. And that might partially be because a lot of our clients are service providers. So I imagine that may be different in a product kind of company. But I think one of the big challenges that a lot of companies have is just keeping track of the sales team. How can we tell if we set a goal for our sales team? How can we tell if they really are making results toward that goal, and tracking that kind of behavior and actions and things like that. So we use it at Delta Data Services a lot to ensure that our team timesheets get delivered and that they get paid in a timely fashion. Some of our clients use this information to keep track of their sales team and their activities toward reaching their forecasted goals, things like that. Some of our clients also, one of our clients, they have a product where they certify trainers, and they have to recertify the trainers every year. So they keep track of how many trainers have to be recertified in the upcoming months. So they have graphs that show, next month we have this many trainers, the following month we have that many trainers. So that's another use case for the business intelligence. But really, I think business intelligence just answers questions. So at the end of the day, any questions that a business has that are kind of preventing progress can be answered in a business intelligence type of tool. anything that is preventing people from anything that is too labor intensive can a lot of times be solved with a business intelligence report that gives insight. So it can be used in a lot of different ways.
I love that. And I see what you mean, for better or for worse, because it's also about who's performing and helping us meet the business bottom line or propel the business forward, if they need to stay or go.
So one thing I would say about that, sometimes it's about if the person needs to stay or go. And then sometimes, hopefully, you would also say if they just need support, because sometimes it is a stay or go kind of situation, but also, I think a lot of business intelligence is just to raise a red flag. And this is something I was telling my team the other day. In technology, we always want to break the system. We don't just a lot of business intelligence has coding behind it. So one of the things one of my advisors told me at University of Hawaii when I was in my master's program, he said, it's one thing to build a model or a report or a dashboard, but it's a whole nother thing to make sure it's right and it's giving you the right information back. So like that one company I was talking about that keeps track of the sales team for the longest time before we started supporting them, their reports were not right. So the report would come back to the executive and it would say, oh, your team did this, this, and this. And they'd go up to this team member and say, hey, we got this. You did only this. And the team member was like, no, I did all these other things. And then they'd show them the system. And sure enough, the person had done all that stuff because the report was just completely wrong.
Right.
So that's where like a business like Delta Data Services, I like kind of try to drill this home with my team members. Like the first part is building the report, but it's like that saying about sharpening your knife before you cut the tree. The second part is you've got to test and make sure this report is right, because that's the hardest part. So we've been going through this client's reports and just fixing them for them so that they're giving accurate results back. And so going back to what I was telling my team, like in IT, technology, whatever, we always want to try to break it. You want either yourself or the client to tell you, hey, this isn't working. It's broken. Because the sooner we know it's broken and we can fix it, the better. You want to break it right away and many times and fix it so that they don't come back later and tell you, oh, this thing that was error cost our business $1 million. And you're like,
that's true.
So I take it that way with team members too. Like I keep track of my team members' performance and I tell them, look, break it so I can see the tracking I'm doing is so I can see if something's broken with you. And so put your time in exactly as it is. Don't undersell yourself or oversell. So put it in exact, whether you think I'll be mad or whatever. When I see it's broken, then we can work on it. But if I don't see it's broken because you keep putting less than because you don't want to, make me upset. If I can't see it's broken, we can't fix it. So it's got to break. So we can say, okay, something's going on here. I talk to the client. I talk to you. We get training. We do whatever, but it's got to break so I can know it's broken so we can fix it. So that's another way I really like to look at business intelligence and coding in general. It's got to break, and many times before it's too late. Early, break early.
And there I wanted to say numbers don't lie, but sometimes they do if the system isn't right. That's basically.
It's true. A lot of times the numbers do lie, but they will never lie if you check them, test them, quality assurance. They will not lie then, but many times they do because the system is not a human. It is just a computer. So it only returns what you tell it to return. And if you don't consider all the different options that are available. And if you don't tell it exactly what it should be looking for, it will only return what you ask. So this was the case in this situation. They were only asking for a very narrow piece of information, and the team was entering information in a much broader set of area. And so that was what happened in that situation.
Interesting. I love that. Okay. So moving on into what data actually matters. So getting the right information means you have to know what information is important to the company's decision-making process. So can you please provide some tips for business owners deciding on what data to look at and track, and data gathering rather?
Yes. I think it has to be, I'm going to use a term that is used a lot. It has to be an organic process, especially for small business, as we're growing. You don't want to track things just for the purpose of tracking because you heard you should. You want to track when you think you need to. I'll give an example at my company. For a while, I thought I was working with a coach and I wanted to start tracking like how long. I was mostly doing a lot of the work at that time of my company. I didn't have too many employees yet. So I wanted to track how much of my time I was spending on different tasks. So in my calendaring tool where I keep track of my meetings, I added a field called type of meeting, and I had like client meeting, internal vendor meeting, partner meeting, volunteering, and anything type of meeting that I had, sales. And I started tracking that. And at that time I was looking at it and it wasn't that useful to me at that time. I don't know that it really told me that much, but I just left it on. Now that we have a lot more people at the company, I still have it on, and I don't know that I use it that much, but I may in the future because I think with a lot of people, I may want to start looking at my team members and seeing what type of meetings they're having for the most part. Are they mostly spending their time in Scrum calls with me, or what type of meetings are they creating, or are they mostly making client meetings and things like that? So that was one thing I could start tracking. And it came out of sort of my coaching sessions. So that was a bit of an organic data point that I decided to start tracking, and now I still find it useful at the company. Now, another thing I also started tracking at the company was for all our leads and contacts, leads being unqualified people in your customer database, and contacts being like clients or anybody who you know really well and are doing business with at the company. We do track their industry. I have really liked tracking this. Now, the other point about tracking things is that if you don't track it, you don't get the information. So if you ever think you might want to know something about people in your customer database, for example, you want to start tracking it, whether you need it now or you think you might need it in the future. So because we've always kept track of industry, another thing you can do too is if you think it's going to become important, you can always make that field a required field in your customer database. So industry is not required, but we've done a pretty good job with just telling people to keep it updated. And how that has become useful for our company is that a lot of times we are looking for maybe a referral in a certain industry, like in the staffing industry or in a government agency or, in any industry. And we're able to just filter our customers by that industry. And we're able to see everyone we know in that industry, and then we're able to refer someone who's looking for that to those people in our industry. So I would just say, start keeping track of things that you think are going to be important to your organization, because as the business owner, you have that gut instinct. You are the one who knows, hey, this just seems like something I want to start keeping track of, or this is seeming like a very important piece of information I'd like to have. And then start making that important for your team to keep track of, or make it a required field. And then even if it's not now, maybe sometime in the future, you would build a dashboard in your business intelligence tool on that and provide that to your new supervisors or managers or department heads. And then you'd have all this history about it, because the goal is for us to all be in business in a few years from now. So if you start keeping track of your data now, you're going to have that historical knowledge in a few years. And it's the accumulation of information over time that makes it most useful. So start adding the fields you think are most important, because you come across them now and you think, hey, I'd like to always know that about my client or about my team member or about my vendor. And then just start keeping track of that now, and training your team to keep track of that now. And then, in a few years, you look back and you're like, hey, I have all this information and it's so useful now. Another place that's really useful to keep track of information is in your project management tool. And this is something I haven't talked a lot about, but that's another repository that goes into your business intelligence tool. Always keep track. This project is active. Then complete the project and mark it as inactive, because if you keep that data clean, then you can always report on, here are my active projects, here are my inactive projects. Just try to be good about keeping your data up to date. Then it's going to be most helpful to you. Also be good about just keeping it populated, because then in a few years, you just have all this information at your fingertips and you're like, wow, I can answer a lot of questions about my business because I've been keeping track, and it's wonderful.
That's so true. It makes me think about initially when we started the podcast, we just looked at downloads overall, not even looking at, now more so we look at day 1, day 7, like what downloads. Now it's, I wish I would have had that initial information. Also, which episodes are people really listening to is something that we closely more. So I definitely agree. So, yeah. So, let's talk about data services, focusing on sales and marketing data. I know that's something an area that you all focus on more so. So why is that? And just the importance of focusing on those types of data.
Okay. The reason we focus on sales and marketing is because we have worked with a lot of customer relationship management tools, otherwise known as CRM. We are reseller partners to 2 main softwares, one of which was previously well known for its CRM. Now they offer a lot more tools, including a business intelligence tool. So a lot of our customers were CRM customers. And a CRM, as I mentioned, is really a way to keep track of your customers from a sales perspective. So your customer starts out as a lead, which means they're unqualified. You know very little about them. You've gathered them in bulk from conferences, like newsletter signups, numerous various places, but you don't know them very well. They just express the minimal interest in your company. Then your sales team kind of works on them, tries to develop a relationship. And then as a company, you develop a system or a standard, at which point your company will say, this lead, we now consider it qualified. And at that point, your sales team converts it to a contact, an account and a deal. And the deal is where the sales team and the managers, executives all watch how that company and the person in the company track through the sales process. So in the deal, you have stages of the deal which are related to probabilities. So as you track through, it's represented by a ribbon. In a lot of CRMs, you just change the stage through this ribbon. The probability of conversion to a client increases. And so this is a lot of information that can be put in business intelligence as well. So you can keep track of like how long deals are staying in certain stages, if they get stuck in a certain stage, and things like that. There's a lot of information that can be mined out of the deal stage. So we've supported a lot of customers in there. As I mentioned, the leads also come in from newsletter signups. So we've supported customers with their mass email marketing. So that's a repository that might come into the business intelligence. We always like to connect a client's website contact form into the leads module as well. So that would connect into the business intelligence tool as well. So it's kind of like, we like to think of the CRM as the main hub, and then all these other tools are spokes in the wheel, and then the business intelligence kind of sits on top of all that and pulls everything together as well. So that's why we've mainly focused on sales and marketing. It really has to do with the information behind sales and marketing. And, but we do help customers integrate various repositories that are the spokes of the customer relationship wheel per se.
Got it. So Ebitari, what about someone is listening today and they're like, okay, I want to know my customer. I want to know that we're going in the right direction, and I want to know that we're tracking the right information and data. What advice would you give them on the ways to track the data? Any software tools or resources that they can use?
Well, different companies use different software tools. So my main advice in this area is to try to use the least amount of different tools. So, to remain in the fewest ecosystems possible. And this is something I've discussed with some of my clients, and we've kind of come to agreement in. So I don't want to try to say there's any best way to go, but it is best to use the fewest number of different tools, because you have this issue that tools that are from different vendors don't always integrate or speak to one another very easily without some sort of other tool helping them to talk to one another. So there's a lot of tools that are now buying each other. So maybe you could work, like I know QuickBooks just bought MailChimp. So if you're going to use QuickBooks and you need email marketing, you should maybe go with MailChimp, because they'll make it so those two systems talk to each other very well. So that would be what I recommend. We do use certain tools at Delta Data Services that have a lot of options for various parts of the business, like sales and marketing, finance, human resources, recruiting, desk. We can get all that in one of the tools that we sell. And then we purchase Microsoft, Adobe, and Zoom. And that's our whole package pretty much. So it might still sound like a lot, but it's still actually not that much compared to what some other companies might be having. So just always try to use the fewest tools, try to get ones that are going to talk to each other well, try to pick your business intelligence tool that will be able to pull from the tools that you're already using, and maybe that have an extension or an integration to your CRM, so that you're not like downloading then uploading into it, but there might be like a periodic sync between the tools. So you just kind of know every 3 hours my data will be uploaded into the business intelligence tool, and then I'll have current data, things like that. So that's just what I would suggest.
Lovely. Okay. So I'll put those in the show notes. So this has been amazing. We've learned about the role of data in business, what data actually matters. And then I finally want to end it off by talking briefly about the use of data. Well, we're using data because you've expressed some of the ways that we can use it to understand our market and our company. So once they've kind of made the decision on which data matters, can you talk about how you use data to actually map out a company's performance?
Well, I think this question is probably best answered per company. There might be third-party tools that compare data performance. For example, if you were to search on Google, you can come up with some metrics on all companies, how much they make in a year, how many employees they have. So there are tools out there, and those are metrics comparing companies or showing the performance of companies. So those are as well some metrics that are out there on every company. We also have things like Dun & Bradstreet, so that's the credit of the company. So there are metrics out there on external metrics on every company. Internal metrics, as a small business, I think you want to kind of base that on your needs. When I used to work in a medium-sized management consulting company in Washington, D.C., there are some more advanced metrics that larger companies track, things like EBITDA, which I don't even still know what it means, but it has something to do with like your bill rate to clients and your overhead and all these financial tools. So there's a lot of, and I think when you work with the government requires some of these metrics to be run. So you start understanding that you have to run certain metrics regularly to report to government when you are contracting with the government. So you might have some requirements for reporting. But most of the clients I work with are small to medium-sized businesses, and, they really make up their own metrics that show their performance. Certainly there are all the financial performance, reports, that any accountant would look at, balance sheet, profit and loss. So those should always be available to your company. You can pull them in with your sales and marketing information. You can pull your invoicing in with your sales and marketing information. It's also good to, in your CRM, kind of make that information available to the sales team so they can see, which of their clients have actually paid and which have not, which deals have closed completely because the client has paid. So that's not necessarily business intelligence, but that's getting everything synced and talking to each other. So data flows and transparency is very much in your business, so everyone has access to the information they need to do their jobs and not have to talk to each other all the time and bother each other. They can just get the information they need and, get it without having to interrupt someone else to stop doing what they're doing and get it for them. So things like that. But I think really as a company grows, they will know the information that is most helpful to them. A lot of times it has to do with, like I said, what the client is asking to know about their projects. And then you create those reports to send on a regular basis to your client from your data. Because the client will say, I need to know these stats on my project. And then you create the reports. You have them scheduled weekly and they go off to the client. And the client is happy because they know every week this is what is being produced on their project, things like that. So there's client reports, and then just for the company to have their own knowledge of their performance. They could create their own financials and timesheet and other reports. And again, these can be scheduled and delivered on a period and reviewed by the executive team and things like that.
So reports are very important. Love
yes.
that.
Yes.
So we want to end off by talking about some of the problems that you are solving and some of the offers that you have. So what are some ways that DDS Solutions is assisting entrepreneurs and business owners with gathering and analyzing data to save the money, increase efficiency, and most importantly, grow? So can you just talk about some of your offerings and process?
Yes. So, maybe I can start with this. I would be remiss. I mentioned some of the other tools we use at DDS, and one of the tools we do sell and partner with since 2009 when we started a company is a tool called Zoho. This is a tool that we've been selling and we feel really strongly about it. It's been very helpful to our organization. When we first started with them in 2009, they were mainly known for their CRM. Now they offer more than 40 plus applications, which you can buy one at a time or in a suite, or they do offer a subscription called Zoho One, where you can get all 40 plus apps in Enterprise Edition for a single price, a single invoice, and a single customer support line for a very friendly price for a small and medium-sized business. And that's what we use to run our businesses. It's what we normally recommend to our kind of small, medium-sized businesses who want to go in that route. It does cover a lot of different aspects of businesses, and all the tools talk to one another. You don't have to use all 40. You onboard what you need at that time. You share different apps with different users based on their role at the organization. There's lots of permissions and security and stuff like that. So I just wanted to put a plug for Zoho. We've been partnering with them for a long time. It's a wonderful business, and we've had a great relationship with them, and we wouldn't be here but for that organization. So we just want to put a plug out there for them. And they did name us Wonderpreneur a few years ago on Women's History Month. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They did an interview with a bunch of other women business owner partner resellers, and they named us all Wonderpreneurs. So that was very sweet of them, and I appreciate it. So we use a lot of times Zoho, but we'll work with any tools that the organization is using. And generally we come in, and the first thing we do is we do a discovery period, and we try to understand what is the problem. I just also wanted to give a quick shout out to Eric and Backup from the Thursday, April 21st podcast, because he was talking about the archetype brand. Yeah. So I after listening to his podcast, I went back and looked at some cards a friend had given me, about 50 archetype cards that were put together by a woman called Carolyn Mice, who had kind of expanded on the 12 that Eric had presented on the show. So I picked 2 that I thought would be a good archetype brand for my company. I'd never thought of it for a business brand. I always thought of archetypes for my personal life. So the 2 that I picked after listening to his podcast and thinking about the cards, the archetype cards for my business, I picked Detective for great powers of observation and intuition, desire to seek the truth. And the second one I picked was Liberator, freeing yourself and others from outmoded beliefs, releasing negative thought patterns.
So, I love it. That is so beautiful.
Thank you. So I guess where we're trying to go with this is we always start with kind of going into a company and trying to understand, why are they stuck? What's going on? What is the problem? What is the questions they're trying to answer? what's going on here? And then we kind of are able to come out and say, all right, here are some of the things we're seeing. We're never able to see everything, but at least we're able to then give them an estimate of, hey, we think this might take about this long to dive in and get you guys some relief and get you guys some help. And that's usually good because then they have a ballpark and we have a better understanding. We're not going in there blind. And then we start the project and we start work. We start cleaning up data. We start running reports. We start double checking reports and testing and retesting. And we start talking to the team. We've talked to them during the discovery phase, but we start talking more and we just start working like that until, you know, things are looking much better, working seamlessly, and reports are returning what they should be. Executives are getting the questions they want answered. Team members are more satisfied because their work is more transparent to the people that need to see it, and everything's flowing a lot more smoothly. So yeah, detective and liberator, and that's kind of what we try to do.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it to hear just the knowledge that's being spread on the podcast, but also how applicable it is for business owners and you using it. So I'd be sure to tell him about that too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so, Ebitari, what would you say are the benefits of outsourcing this process versus people doing it themselves?
Well, a couple things. What we really offer are kind of two things. It's that third-party objective perspective, you know, to not have the internal kind of like stressors and politics and everything that kind of starts happening internally. Mm-hmm. For better or worse, we come in and we might be hated or loved, but at least we're not on the inside. We're kind of on the outside. We try to be, we try to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, try to be more objective and try to look at numbers and kind of look for errors and be more quality assurance oriented and professional and try to go from that angle instead of, all the internal things that might be going on. So that's that. And then the other thing we like to tell our customers is just that, we're like them. We're a small business. We have that entrepreneurial spirit. We've just got that never give up attitude, and we're going to bring all that passion to their business too. And we're just going to go at it and try to get them where they're trying to go, because we're not giving up at our business. We're going to try to achieve our goals, and we're going to take that energy and enthusiasm and never give up attitude toward their data too. We are in it for the long haul for them too. And so that's what we bring to all our customers.
Love it. And in your experience of working with the clients that you've worked with, what are some of those transformational stories that you've witnessed, and how has this helped them grow their businesses?
Well, the transformational stories, for me, cause we're usually on the ground. A lot of times what happens is when we're in discovery, we are working with the executives because they're going to make the decision about if they're going to hire our company or not. But once we get hired, we now start supporting the team. And so that's where we really start noticing the team take a sigh of breathe out because we start cleaning things up, and all the little things that have been aggravating them for years. You can't click this button. When you click this button, this happens, or the data is just, we just start cleaning all these things up and fixing the reports, and they can see what they're supposed to see, and others don't see their work. Others can't delete their work, and the notes show what it's supposed to show, and they just breathe out and they're safe and their information is secure and it's getting where it's supposed to go. And everybody is just a little bit happier. And those are the success stories, really.
Yeah, especially when you think about like numbers and things. It's, it seems so foreign to some people, and some people just don't want to deal with it when it comes to business. And it's just a sigh of relief also of taking the things off your plate, but also that delegation and alleviation. So I totally get it. So this has been amazing. And I want to end off by asking you, what are some of your favorite tools and resources that you've used that have helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Okay, so let's see. I listen to some of the other podcasts, and a lot of what they say is we all are doing the things you start doing when you become an entrepreneur. You start working out, eating well, getting exercise, meditating. You have to do these things because it becomes like you have no other choice, right?
Yes.
But one thing I just wanted to put a little plug out there for all us Black entrepreneurs. I just want to say one more thing. And that is that I want to remind all of us that we need to take care of our vessels. We need to take care of our bodies, and this is not just like working out and things like that, but, we've got to, I found myself in physical therapy lately, and I just don't see the other Black entrepreneurs at physical therapy. I just don't see the other Black entrepreneurs getting a mammogram. I live in Long Beach, and there's a lot of diversity here. Why aren't I surrounded at physical therapy or at the mammogram? Where are we? And so I just want us all to, it's not just when you get hurt, you should be at the doctor, but you should also be there for maintenance. So don't forget the doctor. The doctor is very important for any injury you get when working out. Go to physical therapy and maintain mammograms, all that. We've just got to take care of this vessel, and it takes work, and God gave it to us, and it's the only one we got. So want to see you guys out there.
Love it. That is definitely a different turn. And I agree. I think I didn't start really working out and doing all of these things until I became like full-time entrepreneur. So it's just that time that I had to sit and think like, now I have the time to do this, I feel like. So, or just make it a priority rather.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. And lastly, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Well, that's a very big question. Very, very big. Very, very big. I'm kind of humbled by it. I guess I would say, I was born and raised in Nigeria, and I answered this question to someone else, but in Nigeria, my dad's ethnic group is a minority as well. We're from the Niger Delta, is the Ijaw tribe, and this is where all the oil comes from, the petroleum. So it's the wealth of the nation. And yet, even though this is where the wealth of the nation comes from, the schools in the area are probably the worst in the country, and the investment back in this area is very, very poor. So you can see parallels. Now I came to America. My mom's American, and then, I'm an African American woman trying to make a business here, and I'm a minority too. And yet other African Americans here have embraced me, and I'm in the same pool trying to get Black certified, woman certified. And I'm just humbled by the whole thing, I don't know. It's, I want to do business with the government. Got my woman-owned small business, WOSB, through the SBA. I'm humbled to have met some other Black veteran-owned businesses that want to partner with us and work with us, who seem more trustworthy, because we've been burned. We've been partnered with and then abandoned after the project was won. So it's not an easy question. There's so much to it, but I'm humbled. I know there's a lot of forgiveness to happen out there. I know there's a lot of understanding, empathy, and love to happen out there. And I know that I have been lifted up, and I'm grateful. I don't know. Thank you. That's it.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. Such a heartfelt message. And Ebitari, I know people who are listening are going to want to know how to connect with you. So can you please provide ways for people to connect with you, follow you online, and support you?
Yes, thank you for asking that.
You're welcome.
Our website is www.D as in Delta, D as in Data, S as in Services LLC.com, and you can get all our information there. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name, and we would love to hear from you, connect with you on LinkedIn, and network with you and get to know you. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Yes. Well, this has been amazing, Ebitari, and thank you so much for providing so much value, breaking it down for our audience, and just coming so prepared, but also supporting the Black to Business podcast as a listener. So we appreciate you and all the work that you are doing, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you so much.
I just loved how insightful this conversation was. And all this time I thought, numbers don't lie. But as Ebitari mentioned, if you don't have the right system in place to track data accurately, the numbers will lie. So as she said, document your systems. It's so important. Have reports. It's so important. It brings me so much joy that we have amazing people and experts on the show who continuously bring it week after week. So make sure you check out all the wonderful resources mentioned during this episode at blacktobusiness.com/93. And we would love it if you could take a few seconds to leave us a review. See you next week, same time, same place.